So I've been doing this YouTube thing for a couple of weeks now, and I had one of my videos actually start doing pretty well, and I got a really cool questions and thoughts and comments and like from actual people. That was kind of cool. But one of the things I was kind of called out on is I'd like, oh, Steven, you're so good at doubling businesses and tripling businesses, and you're a marketing guy. Like, how about you just tell us what's the difference between like $0 to $100,000, $100,000 to $1 million, and $1 million to $5 million, which I thought was like kind of a weird question. So I'm really good at doubling, tripling, quadrupling businesses. That might sound like I'm pounding on my chest and tell you how great I am, but I've just worked with so many damn businesses at this point. I mean, for Tony Robbins alone, I coached and consulted with over 5,000 businesses. 5,000, like that's not an exaggeration. I was speaking 2, 3, 4, 5 times per day some days for like 8 years straight. I mean, I lived in a Marriott every single day for 8 years, right? And I'm a double diamond ultra platinum status member. So anyways, the reason I bring this up is because I'm really good at doubling. I'm not very good at taking someone from $0 to $100,000. So I really kind of racked my brain and tried to figure out like, okay, if I had to coach someone and teach someone how to go from $0 to $100,000, what would I need to tell them? What would I need to say? And I've joked about this in the past. I said, to get to $100,000, you just got to beg, borrow, and steal. So I've built 3 multi-million-dollar businesses. You guys probably heard my silly little story here. And again, I'm not pounding on my chest and telling you how great I am. I'm just telling you, like, I was able to do it, but I feel like I got kind of lucky. Let me break down the 3 segments, if you will, of like $0 to $100,000. What do you need to know? What do you need to focus on? What do you need to pay attention to? And then to go from 100,000 to $1 million in your business, what do you need to pay attention to? What do you need to do? And then to go from 1 to 5, which I really truly believe is the easiest because now you've got some resources. You've got some help, you've got some team members, and I'll talk about that in a second here because it's just so much easier. You look at all these multi-billionaires who just make more billions and billions and billions. Well, it's because they already freaking had money, right? They already had resources. But you and I, if we're starting from nothing, if we're starting from scratch, we got to think a little bit more strategic to be able to get our piece of the pie, if you will. So today, let's dive in. If you look at the stats, very few people ever make it past $1 million or $5 million, even here in the United States. Now, $1 million isn't what it used to be, right? There's a difference in the money now. What was it, the headline the other day of just the first trillionaire, Elon Musk, which is, we all know is bullshit, right? No company trades at 25x its revenue. Anyways, so if I look at the stats here on the other screen, the stats pull up on Google. It says about 5 million businesses make it over $100,000. If you look at the 34 million small businesses in the United States alone, 5 million of them make over $100,000. That's not bad. It's not a bad solo income for a plumber, an electrician, a chiropractor, a dentist, whatever it is. But now you got 1 million, and that drops down from 5 million businesses down to 1.9 million businesses. So there's a dramatic decrease in the amount of people who actually make it over $1 million, which is kind of sad to me because I think if you have a business up and running and you know this strategy, you too can drop over $1 million if you wanted to. Now the next one is 5 million, and now it's a dramatic decrease, right? Only 500,000 businesses ever make it over 5 million. So, when we look at these stats, you got to realize if you're in business number 1, you're already in like the 1% of people around the world. Most people never start their own business. Most people never do this. They never take the risk. They never try. They never go for it. So if you've ever started a business, like whether you made $1 or $1 million, like I don't care. I got to congratulate you because it's hard. It's not easy, to give up that security of a paycheck, to give up that security, which maybe these days isn't so secure anymore. But here's where we should start. If we're going to go from $0 to $100,000 in a business, you got to know a couple things. First and foremost, break down the marketing and the business side simplest way possible. Here's what you need to know. There's only 2 things you can sell: a product or a service. That's it. There's nothing else. And there's only 3 ways you can sell those things. As a one-to-one connector, like a salesperson, like where you do meetings, appointments, whatever, that's how you sell. Number 2, as a presenter, where you stand up on a stage or you do a video or you do a presentation or like an infomercial, whatever, you sell one-to-many. Or as a merchant, where you've got like an Amazon store, a Shopify store, or just like on a shelf or on a display somewhere. Now, with that being said, to be able to sell a product or service, here's what you need to know. You need to know that the customer, the potential client. You need to know what their exact painful problem is. And I say this all the time to some of my coaching students and some of the people that worked with me in the past is we shouldn't try to be product pushers. We should be problem solvers. And if you can solve someone's problem, Zig Ziglar said it the best. If you can just give enough other people what they want, you will have everything else that you want in life. You know, as a salesperson, as a product, you can't convince people if they're not already convinced. If you're going to sell a product, you got to find the people who already want that product. If you're going to sell a service, you got to find the people who already want that service. Number one, you got to find the exact problem. Number two, you got to find the right person who actually has that problem. And here's what I would argue with most business advice in today's age is most people think that, oh, I got to niche down. This is the advice that every business coach and guru gives all over the internet, all over YouTube. And it's the most asinine advice I've ever had because listen, problems aren't prejudiced. When people are like, you need to niche down, they're like, you need to find white man John, who's 42 years old, who lives in a white picket fence with 2.5 children, has a dog and a cat and a wife, and like, that's your niche. You need to find that out. He works in IT. That's all bullshit. The truth is the niche is the problem that you're solving. Because if you think about it like termites in a house, termites aren't prejudiced, right? Termites don't care if you're white or black or Asian. Like termites don't care your demographics. Termites don't care about your annual household income. Like termites don't care. If you have a house and you got termites, that's the niche. So you need to know what the problem is. You need to know the person who has it. And the person who has termites is usually a homeowner. That's an important distinction because if I'm a pest control company and I'm trying to do pest control, I can't sell pest control to an apartment renter. I can't sell pest control to someone who's renting a house. It's not their decision. I have to sell it to the homeowner. I have to sell it to the apartment building owner. So if you think about that, now you know what the painful problem is. They got termites. Number two, the person who has it is the homeowner. Now you need to know what's the exact offer that you can sell right now. And I mean, I'm using pest control as a silly example just off the top of my head here. But you need to know what am I going to give them? What problems are going to solve? And how do I give them the thing? And the best way you can describe that is you got to learn how to say, here's what I've got, here's what it's going to do for you, and here's how to get it. That's what the core of an offer is. So back in my karate school days, I would say, hey, listen, I'm not selling karate. I'm selling better grades. I'm selling better discipline. I'm selling better home life, confidence, whatever it ends up being. Everyone always thought in the martial arts world that you were selling kicks and punches. You weren't. You were selling self-defense. You weren't. Well, to an extent, right? But in the reality is most parents just wanted their kids to be more confident. Most parents just wanted the kids to do better in school. So if you think about what's the actual painful problem I'm solving, who's the person who has it, and then what's that offer, now it starts to make a lot more sense. And you can actually start to get some attention from someone who would actually buy this product or service. Now, after you know that, you need to know how to get in front of the right buyers. And unfortunately, from 0 to 100,000, I joke like you got to beg, borrow, and steal. But dude, you got to door knock, you got to cold call, you got to go stand on the street corner and wave signs. You got to go to business expos and community events and networking events and everything else. And everyone always thought it was so easy for me as a Tony Robbins guy. But my role for Tony Robbins as the head speaker and trainer was not as glamorous as it sounds. There was a big seminar and we would go in advance. There was only 4 or 5 of us at any given time that would be selling these tickets to the big seminars. And our job was to go get dropped in a random city where we don't know anybody. We got no friends, no family, no resources, we got nothing. And it's like, all right, fill all the butts and seats. Hey, we've got 20,000 seats at the stadium. You don't know anybody here, but go to this random city you've never been to and go figure it out. And it was like, at the beginning, of course, I thought it was like, oh my God, I work for Tony Robbins now. I'm going to be so rich and famous. So I was so stupid, right? And I would even say, hey, Tony, like, where do we start? He's like, hey, you see that rock on the ground? You just pick it up, you throw it. And wherever it lands, that's where you start. Just go talk to the next person. If they say no, go talk to the next person. So, I was door knocking real estate offices and mortgage companies and insurance companies. So, imagine me going up to the door, knocking on the door. Hey, I'm the head speaker for Tony Robbins, and I'm knocking on your door in Norfolk, Connecticut, or Virginia, Norfolk, wherever the hell that is, right? Or Hartford, Connecticut, or I'm in Boston, or I'm just like, and they're like, who are you? You're crazy. But look, if you're going to go from 0 to 100,000, you're going to really start a business. You got to be willing to look a little stupid and a little crazy. And for me in the Tony world, like I got to experience that every 2, 3, 4 months. I was basically starting a new business every 2 or 3, 4 months. Now I had the product, I had the offer, I know what the painful problem was, and I knew who to sell it to, because not everyone wants personal development. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, gee, I can't wait to buy a Tony Robbins ticket today. Now, Tony is a little different, but for me, it was like, I started to understand that my core demographic was salespeople, because salespeople understood, if I do better in my life, I make more money. So I was looking for specifically commissioned salespeople who could actually benefit from personal development, leadership, communication training. If their mind was right, they did better. They made more phone calls. They closed more deals. So it was like a direct correlation between the problem, like I'm not doing as well as I could as a salesperson, to I go to Tony Robbins, my life changes. And Tony would always say this is like a Trojan horse. So you go in helping them with what they want, and then you give them what they need. And so for a lot of business owners like you, like me, whether you're selling marketing services or advertising services, again, what's the painful problem? Who's the person you got to sell it to? And you got to really figure that out. I didn't figure that out right away. Even for Tony Robbins, even for the karate school, even for our asset protection business, for all these other things, we really had to dig in. Like, who was the actual person who was going to buy this thing? Wasn't as easy as you think. That's why it's been so difficult for people and for me to coach people to go from $0 to $100,000. It's tough because you got to figure all that out. And now the next step here is you got to find out, how do you fulfill on this and how do you learn? Because one of the challenges that small business owners, especially solopreneurs, website designers, advertising agencies, marketers, funnel builders, like all the people, like maybe you're watching this and you're one of these people, that you provide a great service, you build websites, you run ads, you do marketing for people, whatever it is. But the challenge that we run into just getting started is that you need to spend most of your time getting sales and getting business. And in the sales world, we call it like get conversations, do conversations. So you need to do that. But now you also need to service. And a lot of small solopreneurs get stuck in this catch-22 where like they get a client, now they spend all of their time servicing that client, so they can't do the lead generation that they need. And then they end up with that client either moving on or finishing the project or whatever. Now they're starting from zero once again. So you, if you're going to go from 0 to 100,000 or 200,000, whatever it is, you need to figure out, how do I still generate leads while I'm servicing the customer, the client? And these days with AI, it gets a little bit easier for us, but it's not like you can just let AI run amok and build websites for you and everything. You have to actually still go in and correct things and fix it and figure out the strategy and all that stuff. So hopefully that makes sense. But now the challenge is you got to keep costs low, because a lot of people end up just spending every dime that they make, and we forget. And I know when I've done coaching and consulting and business stuff in the past, one of the challenges that I face talking to a business owner is they just feel allergic to the word profit margin. Right? If you cannot make this mistake, because I'll tell you, I've worked with some very, very large companies. My last client was like $400 million and they were a public company, but they didn't even talk about profit margins. All they talked about was stock price. That's all they cared about. But even smaller businesses that are like $1 million or $2 million, I know businesses that have called me looking for help. I'll tell you one specifically, and I can't tell you the name of this business because I'm not trying to be a dick, but they made $40 million a year. But they were losing $3 million a year. So what the hell is the point of making $40 million a year on paper if you're spending $43 million just to make that money? And like, my dad would always say this, I can break even sitting on the couch, right? Which is true. If you're not going to actually be able to put money back in your pocket, what's the point of actually freaking starting a business? Jim Rohn would say profits are better than wages. And the reason that is because you pay the taxes after you get the money and spend it versus before you get the money, right? So anyways, you got to figure out, how do you keep your costs low and your profit margins high? Because most businesses don't run on high margins. And that's what you need to do as a solo entrepreneur, as a business owner, whatever it is. And then you got to really start to understand, and this is something that I can't really tell you without sounding like a jerk, but you got to be able to tell the difference between a real opportunity and a fantasy. Right now in the AI space, everyone believes that they're going to create the new big application with AI. They've never coded before. They've never run a software company before. And they think that they're going to make an app that's going to make them a bajillionaire overnight. And it's just not going to happen. That's a fantasy. They don't understand how difficult it is to actually create software code that works. They don't understand how difficult it is to make it safe and secure. They don't understand how difficult it is to get someone to sign up for a piece of software and keep them happy and make sure the churn is low. It's very difficult. One other key note that I'll give you here in my notes here, from $0 to $100,000, you can't automate a business that doesn't have a proven product or service service or something that people want. And a lot of people I think right now are like, how do I automate this entire process? I don't want to take sales calls. I don't want to. Look, you can't. You're going to have to get dirty, deep in the trenches and figure out, how do I sell this to people? How do I talk to people? And to go from 0 to 100, if I can just drop it in a sentence, it's like get conversations and do conversations. Talk to people, ask them their pain points, find a product or service that's going to solve it. I'll give you one last piece before I move on to 100,000 to a million. And here's what I've noticed. There's only 2 ways to build a business. It's either build this incredible product or the best thing that you can come up with and go try to find people and convince them to buy it, which is very freaking difficult. Or number 2, you find a group of people, you ask them what they want, like their pain points or things, and you go find a solution and you give it to them. That way of starting a business is 10 times easier. Now, ask me, I'm an idiot. Which one have I always done? I've always done the first one. And I'll tell you, it's stupid and it's hard. Maybe I'm just masochistic. I don't know. Now, section 2, how do we go from $100,000 to $1 million? And this one, I can honestly tell you, I'm pretty damn good at. But if you've got an offer that's actually working, now we need to start to understand, like, how do we keep it profitable at scale? Because you can definitely get more sales. That's cool. But revenue is just like an ego booster. Because like I said before, I know these 40 million guys, they're spending 43 million, but that's not an uncommon conversation that I have, because I knew another guy, he was paying 6 people, salespeople, commissions on every sale. So every sale that he made, he was losing $1,000. Just too nice of a guy. So he was like paying someone to book an appointment, and then he was paying someone to make sure that person showed up to the appointment. Then he was paying the salesperson to actually take the call and sell the product. And then he was paying the sales manager a commission on that person's sale. And then he was paying himself a little bit. He was losing $1,000. The sale was like $6,000 and he was paying $7,000 to do it. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And you might feel like right now, like, oh, that doesn't apply to me because I just don't have enough sales. No, I'm telling you, it does apply to you, because if you want to scale from like 100,000 to $1 million, you need to make sure that you're actually going to make money. I would rather make $200,000 and keep 100% of it than make $1 million and only make $100,000. I hope that makes sense, because now you need to start to figure out like which customers are actually profitable. Because you are going to have an array of customers. And what I would like you to have is clients. What's the difference? A customer is someone who buys from you one time and they go away. A client is someone who pays you again and again and again, multiple times per year, either monthly or every quarter, whatever it is. You want clients that keep coming back, because listen, in economic winter, the thing that we're entering right now, you can no longer have satisfied customers. You got to have raving fans. Raving fans stay and they bring all their friends with them. And that's one of the easiest ways to go from 100,000 to $1 million, is you just have really, really happy raving fan customers that tell everybody about you. And that way it's not so hard. And those people coming in are just, the lowered customer acquisition cost is tremendous, because you can get referrals and more business and all that good stuff. Next, you got to figure out which acquisition channel is repeatable. So here's what I would say. To go from 100,000 to $1 million or above, you need a repeatable sales process. You're looking for the slot machine that when you put a quarter in, you go cha-ching and you make $1 out, right? You're looking for something that you can put in time, money, or energy or effort, and you're going to get something back. So for me, I understood that when my businesses took off, the karate school, the asset protection business, the seminar business, and then the Tony Robbins gig that I had, all of those businesses, I started to understand that once I figured out the sales process, the rest just kind of happened. So again, as an example, in the Tony world, I knew that if I just woke up, I shaved, I showered, I put the suit and tie on, and I went to go speak at my next talk, real estate office, mortgage, title, insurance, car dealership, whatever it was, I would go speak there and I would do a training and I would consult with the company. I knew some of those people would buy, some of them wouldn't, and I would just repeat that process. And it didn't matter how good I felt that day or how bad I felt that day, because at the end of the day, some people would buy, a percentage of them would do it. So I just knew if I did this thing, I would make sales and everything would be okay. And that's what you need for yourself as well. Now, the challenge is, I don't know what that looks like for you. You're going to have to figure it out yourself. And that's something I can give you ideas. But the thing that nobody talks about in business is there's 1,000,000 ways to become successful in business. And the challenge is, what works for one person won't work for you. And what works for you might not work for me. I went and I door knocked, and I went and I cold called, and it would take me 200 cold calls per day to book 2 appointments. Now, I know one of my students, I teach a little AI course on the side here. One of my students in the AI course, the other day, he made 7 cold calls and got 5 sales. I was like, dude, how the hell did you do that? So like, he's just better. And look, I've just come to accept it. And the funny thing about business advice is you're going to go on YouTube and you're going to read books. And someone is going to say like, I'm Alex Hormozi and I made $100 million. And let me show you exactly what I did to make $100 million. And the funny thing is you can look at that advice and you're like, man, this is really good advice. And maybe you try it and it doesn't work out for you because the circumstances are different, because your personality is different, because he can get away with things that you can't get away with, or whatever it ends up being. Maybe he got lucky, maybe not. Obviously the guy is pretty damn successful. You probably have had some success in your life too. I know I have. But if we look at that and we say, okay, we want to take the concept, the spirit of the advice, and we want to modify it for what we're doing in our world. And we can do that. But again, it's not going to just be overnight we're going to do this. So here's what I'm trying to say. If you're going to build a business, you need the repeatable sales process. And that repeatable sales process is going to look different for you than anybody else. Maybe you can send out 100 LinkedIn messages and you're going to get 10 sales. Maybe you're the kind of person that's really good at Instagram and you can post a story on Instagram and people want to do business with you. I don't know. I've not been able to do either one of those things, but I know people who can. For me, my big acquisition channel is always referrals. When people do business with me, they get really excited, they get really great results, and they do that. Now, I do paid advertising for my clients all day, every day, and I am damn good at it. But ask me if I've ever been able to make paid advertising work for myself. No. And I don't know what the secret is. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too close. And I'm sure you experience this too, where you're too close to your friends or family. So the advice that you give them never comes off right and never comes off as accurate, whatever it is. But that's the same thing. So next, you need to start to understand like what your conversion rate is so you can start to reverse engineer the numbers. So you start to say, if I want $1 million this year, how much money is each of my clients worth? And how many clients am I going to actually need? And then what's the activities I need to do to be able to get there? So you can just reverse engineer these numbers. This is where it starts to get fun and starts to get a little bit more mathematical, because it's not just like, oh my God, anybody please buy my product or service. It's like, okay, here's the right person. Here's the right pain point. Here's the right offer. How many of these people do we need to be able to make the money we want to make? And how do we get in touch with them? That's how you go from 100,000 to 1 million, or even 2 million, I would say. But if you're going to move forward now, there's one thing that you got to do at this level that's going to get you up to the next level later on, which is documenting your process. You need to have notes. So with that being said, before I move on to 1 to 5 million here, I'll give you one last note. You don't want to confuse your hustle with a business model. And for some people I know, that I think I'm one of them, that I've made this mistake in the past where just because I work my ass off and I don't sleep and I make all these calls and I door knock and I'm willing to do anything to make the business successful, that didn't always mean the business was a good business. It just meant that I hustled and out-hustled other people. Now, ask me how that goes, because you can get really tired and really sick doing that. I don't recommend that. What I would like you to find is the right business model for the right prospect, the right product, the right service, the right offer at the right time. And then I want you to complete that repeatable sales process, that slot machine, cha-ching, cha-ching. Let's move on to the next one. And here it is, 1 to 5 million. How do we do this? Well, now you need to actually build some infrastructure. And this is a thing that most people fail to do because it's hard. You can no longer go from 1 to 5 million by yourself. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how talented you are. You are not going to be able to fulfill on a product or service on your own. You're not going to be able to do all your ads on your own. You're not going to be able to sell all of it on your own. You're just not going to be able to do it. This is where you got to realize that you need really good leaders inside of your organization to start to help you. And you need killers, because look, you cannot afford to hire a bloat. What is bloat? In this day and age, it's 2026. You can't hire people that suck. And I know that sounds harsh. I know that sounds horrible. And I've made this mistake a million times. And I try to just hire someone who I think is going to be good. I suck at it. I'm terrible. So now I got really lucky. My brother moved out here with me and he's working with me and he's a freaking godsend. I didn't think he was going to work as well as he is. And he's taken AI and marketing and all this stuff like a duck to water. It's like insane. I got so damn lucky. Before I got my brother, I hired and fired 50 freaking people. 50. And I took way too long to let them go because they weren't the right people or whatever. So here's what I know. To go from 1 to 5 million, you got to build leaders. You can't build helpers. You got to be able to have people on your team that are independent enough to be able to do this, because you got to take yourself out of the repeatable work. So if you're going to ever grow from 1 to 2, 2 to 3 to 4 to $5 million, you yourself can no longer be the artist. And I think a lot of us get into business because we're really good at marketing or advertising or web design or whatever. We want to do the thing. But what you start to realize is now you're no longer the artist, the person who digs the ditches. You need to be the business owner and you need to orchestrate how that stuff gets done. And yeah, it's tough. For all of us control freaks out there, we want to be the one to build the website the right way. We want to be the ones to build the marketing campaign the right way. But at the end of the day, you can't do that. You got to take yourself out of the repeatable work and you got to be up in the strategic level. And that doesn't mean you work any less. It just means that the work is different. And a lot of days, I think a lot of friends and family now have seen me where I'm just sitting in this office here, staring at my computer screens, just thinking. It's hard. It's not easy. It looks like I'm not doing any work at all, but I'm just sitting here staring at a wall, losing my damn mind because I'm like, how do I position this offer? How do I create this new campaign? How do I make sure these guys remain profitable while scaling to the next level? I'm asking these really difficult questions that I'm reading a lot of books. I'm going through courses. I'm finding other people have done it in the past. I'm looking at other examples of who passed this level before. So to go from 1 to 5, you got to start to think a lot more strategic. And I know if you've watched any of my content before, you've seen me speak in the past or whatever, I'm just obsessed with strategy. I like that moniker that somebody gave me, the obsessed strategist, because you just got to be obsessed. Now, if you're going to go from 1 to 5, let me tell you the secret. There's only 3 ways to grow a business. And I learned this from Jay Abraham. I got to work with him for about a year and he was such a good coach and mentor, but he would always explain things really advanced. And I like to break it down a little bit more simple. There's only 3 ways to grow a business. Get more customers, get them to spend more money, get them to come back more often. If you understand that though, now if you increase the amount of customers that you have per year by 10% and you increase the amount of money that they spend every time they buy by 10% and you get them to come back 10% more often, which means like 10% of the people buy a second time per year, that's 10%, 10%, 10%, but that's multiplied. It's not added. So it's not 10 plus 10 plus 10 equals 30. It's 10 times 10 times 10. And in that position, now you've got a 33% increase in business. So when you think about this now, that explains how a business can grow exponentially instead of linear. Now, here's what that means in plain English. If I can get a business 33% more customers, I can get their average ticket 33% higher, and I can get a third of their people to come back one more time per year, that's a 266% increase for the year. Maybe I'm doing math really quick here in front of you, and this is a little confusing, a little crazy, a little goofy, sounds insane. But I got to tell you, I got really good in my marketing consulting company at doubling businesses, not because I was some genius, but because I just sat down and reverse engineered. If I grow their customers by this percent, and I get them to spend more money every time they buy by this percent, and I get them to come back more often by this percent, I just doubled your business. And it wasn't like rocket surgery, right? It was pretty simple mathematics. Then I just came up with strategies for like, okay, if we're going to increase the amount of customers that this person has, where do we get more customers? Well, they have this customer for this product, for this offer. Where do those people hang out? Well, hey, we're not running Facebook ads. Let's start to run some Facebook ads to get new customers from there. Hey, we're not running Reddit ads. Let's do some Reddit ads. Whatever it is, we would come up with a strategy to get that. Hey, there's other people who can promote us, affiliates. Hey, we can run a billboard ad over here. Hey, we can do this. Whatever it was, we come up with 3 or 4 strategies to increase the number of customers. Same thing in the middle. If I want to go from 1 to 5 million, the real leverage is not getting more customers. Listen to me now. The hardest part about growing business is we think that it's only new customers, but we live in a time where there's never been a more difficult time to get someone to buy the first time. So it's really expensive in time and money and energy to get someone to come in the door the first time. But we also live in this time that once somebody finds someone they know, like, and trust, they don't want to leave. They just want to do business with that person again because they had a good experience. So the leverage in growing a business is not in getting more customers. It's getting your current customers to spend more money per visit and or getting them to come back more often. So give you a quick example. The carpet cleaning company, in the past, someone would call for a carpet cleaning every couple of years. Nowadays, a lot of carpet cleaning companies will do a membership. And I'm not saying that you should do a membership. I'm not saying you should do a monthly subscription or whatever for carpet cleaning, but you should schedule a carpet cleaning every 6 months. So now that customer that used to buy from you once every 4 years now buys twice a year. Well, imagine if every one of your customers did that. Now you've exponentially grown the business without adding new customers, just by changing how you provide the service. And this is what I really get paid the big bucks for when I'm doing coaching and consulting, is because I'm thinking through things like this. And you can do it too. I'm not a rocket surgeon, right? Everyone can do this as long as you understand that formula. Get more customers, get them to spend more money, get them to come back more often. That's how you increase the customer lifetime value. And that's how you dramatically go from 1 to 5 million. You can go from 1 to 5 million in a single year if you wanted to, as long as you just reverse engineer those numbers and come up with the right strategies to increase those. The other thing I want to say here is making sure that now you start to understand how to track profit and not just revenue. And I know we tried to talk about it in the $100,000 part and the $1 million part, but look, I know people, I know you, I know me. I know that we say we're going to track profit and very few of us ever do. So at this level though, you got to get really serious. You got to make sure your books are in order. You got to make sure you know the profit margin per sale, per product, per offer, whatever it is, because there's going to be a lot of offers that you start to make that you take on more staff and now the profit margin dips. You need more help and the profit margin dips. And you need to run more ads to acquire more customers. And now the customer acquisition cost goes up and now your profit margin dips. So you just got to watch those numbers like a hawk. That's where things really start to change. And one more thing I'll say on hiring again here is that you don't want to just like have a bunch of employees working with you. You need people who are going to do a job and a task. And if you haven't defined what that task is, don't hire them. And this is a mistake I've made. I'm not exaggerating when I said I actually literally in a single year, I hired and fired 50 people because I would go on Upwork and Fiverr or whatever. And I was looking for someone who's really good at their task. And I tried to turn them into like a really good employee or team member. They would do really good in their first project and then they would disappear or they would fail or they would stop. It just wouldn't work out. And maybe I'm a dumbass for going to Fiverr and Upwork and Guru and these other places. Indeed, maybe I'm the idiot, totally possible. But what I realized was I was giving them like ideas without like a specific task that made profit. So one thing that you want to try to figure out, there's a book called Exponential Organizations, Peter Diamandis and another gentleman, I forget what his name is. And of course, I think he was the original author and Peter Diamandis was just like a ad lib. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make here is they have a thing that says employees on demand. And this is really fascinating because the reason Airbnb scaled so rapidly, Uber scaled so rapidly, DoorDash scaled so rapidly is because they got a gig, they got the money, and then they hired someone to do the job. And most businesses try to like take all of their money and hire people before they have the work or before they have the gig, before they even collect the money. And so they end up paying this person before they even have the money. And then if this payment is late or whatever, I've experienced this in my marketing agency a million times where a client or customer will want to pay at the end of the month, but I got to pay my employees at the beginning of the month. So I'm constantly a month or two behind in payroll and I have to front that money. So it's really easy for a business at $1 million or $2 million or $3 million to have like major cash flow issues. I've experienced it quite a bit in the past. And, there are still days that I experience as well. I think this year we'll do pretty well, but there's still cash flow issues. And this is where we start to get into that catch where it's like every business at this level between 1 and 5 million gets stuck at this level. And I'll tell you what it is. They either need to hire more people to make more money, but at the same time, they need to make more money to hire more people. So there's only two options. You either cut everything down and just stay really small and lean and just be happy with that. But that's never it. It's happiness is about growth and progress, right? On the other side, you raise a bunch of money, you borrow money, you try to pay it forward, and you hope and pray that money that you invest is actually going to catch up and you'll make a return later on. And a lot of businesses fail at this level simply because of that trap. Now, with that being said, the way we can solve that is with AI. And I think in the next video, I'll show you what I mean. And I'll talk about like, how do you actually use AI and automations to replace not just the people you would normally hire, but to actually figure out what processes can be automated. So when you do hire someone, they just oversee these automations. Instead of hiring like 10 people, you can hire one. I hope this is helpful today. I know I kind of ranted and raved quite a bit, but I hope I give you a really good answer from 0 to 100K, 100K to $1 million to 5 million, because I know a lot of people want to scale their business, especially as the economy tightens up. And I think a lot of people who are employees are going to become business owners again. So I want you to kind of jump over some of those hurdles that I had to jump over in the past. And if you just understand that for me, it was always reading a book or taking a course or doing a study of someone who had already passed the level that I wanted to pass. And that's the way I found it. Instead of frustrating myself, well, which I did plenty, I would go out and try to make sure that I had the ability to find someone who already had what I wanted and had the same circumstances that I had and figure out how do they solve this problem. So that's the best advice that I can give you to scale. And if you liked and enjoyed this, look, I'm just starting my little journey here on YouTube. So I'd appreciate it if you stuck around. Leave me some comments because I really like it when you guys are talking to me and just having a conversation, because it's kind of weird for me to just scream at a camera like this and not have a stage and people in front of me and talking to people. So I hope you enjoyed this. And until next time, we'll see you soon.